Good evening. This is your host, Montgomery Norton with astrocosmology.com, and we are talking about the current monthly transits for December 2025. It's currently Sunday, November 30th. So we'll jump in with December 2nd, Tuesday. We're going to have Venus sextile Pluto. I mentioned this in the previous video, and check that out if you are watching this one. I talked about the major configurations happening in December, as well as the retrograde planets. So this first current monthly transit, December 2nd, Venus sextile Pluto. Venus is in Sagittarius, Pluto's in Aquarius, and it's part of the cradle configuration. Excuse me. Basically explain this as the feminine newly exploring the big cosmos of philosophy, culture, religion, travel, comes into contact with the revolution of society that is taking place. It's a moment when the feminine experiences experiences and feels supported by the unearthing transformation of darkness. Maybe there will be a break in the Epstein case. December 4th, 3:13 p.m., full moon, 13 degrees, 3 minutes of Gemini. Basically, this is an opportunity to feel into the fullness of the mind, the expansion of thoughts, communication, and mental activity. Here we get to contemplate our inner child and feel into our mental considerations. December 5th, T-square. I talked about this in the last video. We have 3 T-squares this month, all to the moon's nodes, which is our evolutionary trajectory collectively. The first one is Sun in Sagittarius, square the North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo. This is the consideration of our path of evolution, whether it be collective or personal. Here we get to peer into the evolutionary path from personal work and service to generational karma. We get to stand at the crossroads with our present awareness and consider the trajectory of evolution from personal endeavors to collective service. Also December 5th, 2:03 p.m., Mars, 20 degrees of Sagittarius, basically 23 degrees because of 57 minutes, trines Chiron retrograde. The masculine journey through our collective belief systems has a moment to connect with and cooperate with healing the masculine wounded warrior. This Chiron in Aries transit that's going on since I believe 2008. I'll have to double check that, or you can Google it. I don't have it in front of me right now, but we've really been doing a lot of healing around the masculine warrior. And it obviously doesn't look pretty. December 6th, 5:04 a.m., Mercury in Scorpio with Lilith at 28 degrees, trines Jupiter. This is the exact trine that makes up a grand water trine that I talked about in the last video. Basically, our minds are focused on the dark secrets of how to liberate the repressed feminine through feeling into our social and emotional expansion. December 7th, 8:57 a.m., Mercury and Lilith trine Saturn exact. Again, this is part of the grand water trine. Mercury and Lilith on one end, Saturn on one end, and Jupiter. And Saturn is actually with Neptune, but I'm reading the exact kind of lineups. So December 7th is when Mercury and Lilith are exactly trine sorry, not Lilith, but Mercury is exactly trine Saturn. Lilith is involved, she's only 3 degrees away. So, how has society kept the mind of the liberated feminine contained or shackled? We as a society are just finally coming to terms with the role of the liberated feminine within the confines of social order and how to break free of that repression. Sound familiar? December 8th, 4:15 p.m., Mars in Sagittarius squares Saturn. Despite the expansion of the masculine's journey into the higher realms of thought, the boundaries and restrictions of karma create a conflict for growth. December 9th, 12:14 a.m., Uranus opposite Lilith. This is the exact lineup that is involved in both the cradle and the kite that I described in the last video. And this can be interpreted as the awakening revolution with regard to money and resources is opposing the deep cathartic liberation of the feminine. December 10th, 4:23 a.m., Neptune goes direct. So Neptune went retrograde back to 29 degrees 22 minutes of Pisces. It started its retrograde, and I talked about this in the last video in the retrograde section. It started its retrograde on July 4th. It's gone, sorry, where on July 4th it was up to 2 degrees 10 minutes of Aries. It's now traveled back to 29 degrees of Pisces by December 10th. And then it'll go forward and cross over the 0 degree Aries point, the ending and beginning, the alpha and omega of the zodiac, the whole astrological system. So we're starting both a new 14-year cycle, which Neptune spends in each sign. We're going to get a whole new 14-year cycle of Neptune in Aries. We've had our toe dipped in it. It went up to 2 degrees by July 4th, like I said. But we're also getting a whole new 165-year Neptune cycle. This is like a whole new travel through the zodiac by Neptune. And Neptune, if you don't remember or don't realize it, governs our mysticism, our spirituality, our delusions, our illusions, the mist, the fog. And so basically this is a whole new mystical endeavor for the planet, a whole new opportunity to formulate spirituality. Neptune shall be in Aries until 2039. Also, December 10th is the exact lineup of Mercury and Lilith. It's actually Mercury that's exactly lining up, but Lilith is only a few minutes away. So they're right on top of each other and opposite Uranus and Taurus. And again, these are involved in both the cradle and the kite. This is the opposition in those two configurations. This is the exact lineup of that opposition, thus forming the kite with the grand water trine to Jupiter and Saturn, which then also is a part of the cradle. We finally get to experience the mental clarity around what the liberation of the feminine truly means in society and communicate it freely. Sometimes I write and read these transits, translate these transits, and it's like such a profound moment. Granted, it might not be as clear, concise, accurate as we want it to be or as we think it should be. There might still be major forces involved that are distracting from this evolution. But at its purest form, this is what's happening cosmologically. And it's profound. Also on December 10th is the exact lineup, the Mercury conjunct of Lilith at 28 degrees 54 minutes of Scorpio. So where does that land in your chart? What does it interact with? Again, this is both involved in the cradle and the kite that I talked about in the last video. So the exact conjunction between Mercury and Lilith occurs even though they have been dancing and interacting with other bodies, namely Jupiter and Saturn, together for this past week. As mentioned previously, we are getting a clear glimpse into the mind of both the repressed and the liberated feminine. We're understanding what that means. We're communicating about it. We're talking about it. It's becoming clear to all of us. December 11th, Venus, 13 degrees Sagittarius, squares the moon's nodes. Excuse me. This is the other T-square that I talked about in the last video. We had Sun square the moon's nodes. Now we have Venus. And next will be Mercury. So a T-square is the moon's nodes are always in opposition to each other. This is the second in the series of 3 T-squares, as I just mentioned. So it's Venus's turn to interfere with our evolutionary trajectory. As we move from health, work, and service, Virgo, the earth element, to the disillusionment of all things, we're going to be moving into the water element, the feminine, in her infinite expansion of the mind and the pursuit of destiny. She's in a water sign. She's moving from earth. Sorry, she's in a fire sign. She's moving from earth to water. Scratch that whole last part. Venus is in Sagittarius. She's in a fire sign. The moon's nodes are moving from Virgo to Pisces, south node to north node. So from earth to water. And that fire is just creating conflict with that evolutionary trajectory. Also, December 11th, Mercury and Lilith trine Neptune. This is again involved in the cradle and the kite that I talked about in the last video. Neptune and Saturn are together. This is the exact alignment of Mercury and Neptune at 29 degrees, Scorpio and Pisces. As our minds focus on the liberated feminine, finishing her deep dive into the underworld, they then cooperate with our spiritual exploration of the last degrees of karma and the culmination of the zodiac. Thus the end all be all. This is the experience of contemplating the epitome of the omega of feminine repression and liberation. It's kind of like we are finally done with that aspect of society. Also on December 11th, Mercury enters Sagittarius. Our minds transition into higher order thinking as we begin to explore our belief systems, philosophy, culture, travel. It's an expansion of the mind. Then December 13th, Mercury, 2 degrees of Sagittarius, sextiles Pluto. This is involved in the cradle. It's basically one aspect of the collaboration, how our minds are exploring the deep, dark power struggles of society. Our minds are expanding, but they're also working with that transformation of the darkness in our society, the power struggles, the manipulation, suppression, or repression. December 14th, Mars in Sagittarius squares Neptune. As Mercury enters Sagittarius, Mars is just exiting. So this is at 29 degrees of Sagittarius. But before it goes, it lines up in a conflict with our spiritual karma. This is a battle between the last of the cultural expansion and exploration of the masculine and the revisiting of spiritual consideration of the Omega. When I read these translations that I came up with, sometimes I just want to spend all day thinking and talking, exploring what all this means. Of course, these are just absolutely brief representations of these transits. And that's why it's so great to have these printouts. If you want one, send me an email, montgomery.norton@gmail.com. I can send you these transit documents, and then you can follow along all month long, looking into how these affect you, how they feel. And of course, you can Google all kinds of websites on these transits. Also, December 14th, there's more. Sun 22 degrees Sagittarius trines Chiron retrograde at 23 degrees of Aries. Our awareness, which has been focused on the big picture, our belief systems, is now working to understand our own potential for healing our inner warrior wounds. Again, December 14th, 10:09 p.m., Neptune at 29 degrees, 22 minutes of Pisces, trines Lilith. And this is the exact lineup that's involved in the cradle and the kite from the last video. As we re-examine the last degrees of Neptune's own sign that has been exploring for the past 14 years, wrapping up the lessons around illusion, delusion, mysticism, spirituality, etc. This culmination of karma is supporting the deep, dark, transformative liberation of the repressed feminine. Lastly, 11:34 p.m. on December 14th, Mars enters Capricorn. So now it's time for the man to be in charge. Or at least he thinks so. This is the period of time, about every 2 months, Mars changes signs, and it takes about 2 years to go around the zodiac. So when the masculine in all of us gets to explore what it means to be in charge. But it is also a time to experience the responsibility of leadership and management. The man will feel like he's in charge again. December 16th, 8:33 p.m. Sun 25 degrees of Sagittarius squares Saturn in Pisces. So our big picture awareness is in conflict with the structure that is trying to be built around our karmic heredity. Even though we want to be expansive in our thinking, society is restraining our desire to melt into our feelings. December 18th, Venus Sagittarius trine Chiron in Aries. I believe, and I'm going to double check here real quick. So Venus 22 degrees Sagittarius, trine Chiron 22 degrees of Aries. Our feminine exploration into the higher realms as a moment of working to heal the wound of the warrior, the masculine. She says, "Can I help you heal with the perspective I have gained in my exploration and journeys?" December 19th, new moon in Sagittarius, 28 degrees, 24 minutes of Sag. We get a new perspective. Not only are we exploring the truth of our desires, but the inner child is feeling bold enough to venture out past our comfort zones. December 11th, 11:11 a.m. Sorry, December 20th. Did I say 11th? December 20th, 11:11 a.m. Lilith enters Sagittarius. So rather than transforming the darkness into light by facing our shadow, which he's been doing in Scorpio for quite a while, the repressed/liberated feminine gets to travel out to the farther realms of experience and exploration, trusting the feeling of optimism gained through doing the hard work in the dark shadow of Scorpio. Also on December 20th, another big day. There's 4 transits happening on December 20th. 5:01 p.m. we have Sun at the last degree, 29 degrees, 24 minutes of Sag, square Neptune at 29 degrees, 24 minutes of Pisces. So our open and free minds get to wrap up the exploration of the mystical realms, last bit of this 165-year cycle before our spiritual embarking on a whole new journey through the zodiac. This is the culmination of all endings. Also December 20th, 9:08 p.m., Venus in 25 degrees of Sag squares Saturn at 25 degrees of Pisces. So as Venus is closing out its foray into the philosophical realms, it runs into a conflict with karma, structure, boundaries, and limitations. The void has limits. December 20th, 11:32 p.m., we get the T-square with Mercury square the moon's nodes. This is the third in the series of T-squares to the moon's nodes. First we had the sun, our collective awareness. Then we had the collective feminine, known as Venus. Now we have the collective mind in conflict with our evolutionary trajectory. From the simple duties of work and service to karmic duties of generational healing, our minds are not understanding this evolution of growth that our souls are being asked to make. December 21st, solstice, Jupiter retrograde, 22 degrees of Cancer, squares Chiron at 22 degrees of Aries. The internal abundance of emotional sensitivity and guardedness is having a hard time also dealing with the collective healing of the wounded warrior. Our social, emotional, internal world is not enjoying all the wounds of the warrior and the work, focus, attention that is being paid to the healing of the masculine dynamic. Enough, it says. December 21st at 7:03 a.m., Sun enters Capricorn. So we get a glimpse into this new season of mastery, control, responsibility, leadership, and management. It is a time for us to embody our own authority. December 23rd, 9:30 p.m., Venus at the last degree, 29 degrees, 25 minutes of Sagittarius, squares Neptune, 29 degrees 25 minutes of Pisces. So just before Neptune gets into Aries, it gets a square with Venus. At the last degrees of Sagittarius, Venus runs into the delusions of the mystic. Basically, the collective feminine gets lost in the mists of grandeur or the illusion of thinking too big. Then Venus enters Capricorn on December 24th, 8:26 a.m. Venus comes back down to reality as the collective feminine shifts into a more practical stance or mode of feeling. We get to enjoy being in charge and managing the collective endeavor of the social contract. Venus gets to be in charge. December 27th, 4:14 p.m. Mercury at 22 degrees of Sag trines Chiron. So another opportunity for our minds to explore the greater meaning of healing the wounded masculine, the warrior, and what it means for the human endeavor, our goals, and society's benefit. December 29th, 11:15 p.m., Mercury at 26 degrees Sagittarius squares Saturn. So our minds are busy with the big picture when the responsibility to the collective takes precedent, as well as the work needed to escape responsibility. Again, these are snippets, right? I'm just trying to capture like the potency or the meaning or a clip of what these transits mean. And if you send me an email, I can forward you these transits and then you can look them up as the month goes along. Track it, follow along. It's really interesting, especially doing it with friends and family. So lastly, December 31st, New Year's Eve, 12:49 a.m. So like early morning of that day. Mars is at 12:12 of Capricorn, sextiling the North Node at 12:12 of Pisces. So lastly, the male boss gets a little help from the universal evolutionary process spoken to earlier. The Sabian symbol for 12 degrees of Capricorn is a student of nature lecturing. That's where Mars is. Whereas 12 degrees of Virgo, the south node, where we are coming from, is a bride with her veil snatched away. And then the Sabian symbol of where we are evolving towards, the North Node in Pisces at 12:12, is an examination of initiates. Basically, the collective masculine, which is focused on the authority of leadership, is supporting our evolutionary growth from individual ego work to spiritual, mystical, generational remediation. It kind of reminds me of an astrology reading. There's so much to translate, there's so much to think about. That's why I do recordings when I do my readings, because there's no way you can process it all in that one sitting. I've had people come close, which is impressive. But really reflecting on what's happening, that's why having these transits is so important. Because, again, I'm just giving you a summary. But you can read all kinds of websites as these transits are happening a day or two before and be ready, be primed, informed, curious. Next video I'm hoping to do sooner, given the holidays and everything that's going on. I am having a current transit class here at our studio on December 20th for January and the year 2026. And I hope to have a video out around that time as well. So, blessings. Happy holidays. Hope you're all well. Big hugs. Care Bear hugs. Love you. Take care. Ciao.